Hello and welcome to Rally Point Wargaming, a video series dedicated to the how, the whats and the whys of assembling your armies in the Warhammer 40k universe. All rules and overall points are accurate at the time this video was posted. We take our first visit to the realm of chaos this week, and the traitorous armies of the Chosen of Nurgle. We are looking at the Deathguard, and because I am not above terrible pun names, this one I've dubbed Rickets and Morty. A 2000 point match playlist, and we're using both a battalion detachment and, for the first time, a Supreme Command detachment. The Deathguard are known for using tough, nigh-invulnerable infantry units to slowly advance across the field, spreading their sickness as they go. They divide themselves into plague companies, each specialising in a different form of combat and using specialist tactics. In-game, this translates to a unique stratagem, warlord trait and relic, and in this case, I have chosen the Inexorable Plague Company. Possibly not the best from a competitive standpoint, but I like it for a couple of reasons. One, being a stratagem that can reduce an opponent's charge roll, in a time where melee heavy armies are popular right now, and a warlord trait that I'll mention when we get to the HQ section. The other important rules to mention about Deathguard is the Contagions of Nurgle special rule. This is an aura that all Deathguard give off with a range that increases as the game progresses, from 1 inch in turn 1 to 9 inches by turn 4 onwards. There are ways to increase this range through stratagems, and what it does is passively project a -1 toughness debuff on any enemy units in range. It also acts as a kind of focal point for the army, allowing numerous effects and stratagems to be brought into play, depending on what is in contagion range. The second important rule is disgustingly resilient. For a long time, this was the signature ability of the Deathguard, and has been reworked from a feel no pain ability as it once was, to a reduction of damage by 1, similar to the rule that the Dreadnoughts have. Lastly is the Plague Weapon rule. Various units throughout this list carry weapons both ranged or melee with this rule, and means they get to re-roll any wound rolls of 1. However, like Contagions, there are a lot of additional abilities that trigger off the back of having Plague Weapon. So as the more deductive out there may have noticed since I'm playing Deathguard, have a Supreme Command detachment, and made a weak Morty reference in the title, I may as well start this off with the man himself. I am indeed running Mortarion, Primarch of the Deathguard. This guy is probably one of the single toughest units in the entire game, and while he's not invincible, he will take some serious attention before he's laid low with 18 toughness 8 wounds, behind a 3+ armour save and a 4+ invulnerable save, along with the damage reduction of Disgustingly Resilient just to start off. As Master of the Deathguard, he also has to be my Warlord, which is handy considering he has 4 Warlord traits. Not to choose from, no, he has 4 active Warlord traits. 3 of them are fixed. Revoltingly Resilient to give him a 5+ Feel No Pain ability on top of his already formidable resilience. Living Plague that turns off the effects of non-psychic power auras on enemy units within 3 inches of him. And Arch Contaminator, which provides full rerolls to wound for the various plague weapons carried by core units within 6 inches of him. On top of this, he can then choose one of the Warlord traits from these 7 plague companies. This is chosen at the start of the first turn, so it doesn't have to be fixed, though I generally choose the Gloaming Bloat traits from the Mortarion's Anvil company, which means that any enemy unit within contagion range cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend when charged, and cannot reroll hit or wound rolls when it attacks. This is further augmented by the fact that Mortarion's Contagion aura always counts as being in game turn 4, i.e. a permanent 9-inch aura. He also provides rerolls to hit in a similar manner to a Space Marine Chapter Master, so an automatic aura of rerolling 1s to Deathguard core units within 6 inches, and he can nominate a core unit or character to reroll all hits each turn. But that's not all, as he's also a potent Psyker, which is ironic if you know the background, as he hates Psykers. Able to cast 2 powers a turn and, importantly, deny 3 of your opponents. He knows Smite and 3 powers from the Deathguard's own Contagion discipline, and I have gone for Curse of the Leper to deal mortal wounds, Miasma of Pestilence to make Deathguard units harder to hit, and Gift of Contagion to debuff enemy units before engaging them, which he is very capable of doing, with his Scythe giving him 7 melee attacks on par with a Knight, or alternatively, 21 1-damage attacks at Strength 8 AP2 for dealing with infantry hordes. Add to that the Lantern, his special pistol that can make a hit against every unit in a straight line up to 12 inches away, and he's certainly well equipped. As you may be gathering, he has a lot of special abilities, and there are even a couple of minor ones that I haven't covered in this, but he is a Primarch after all. They are rare, but they are powerful. As he should be really, considering he is a full 25% of your army cost. Moving to the battalion, it is led by a Lord of Virulence, which is a variant of a Chaos Lord unique to the Deathguard, wearing Terminator armour and equipped with a Plague Weapon Power Fist and a Twin Plague Spewer. This is a flamer weapon that automatically hits its targets and gets 2d6 shots at Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 1, that basically hoses down opponents in disease-ridden filth. Deathguard also have a set of abilities known as Deadly Pathogens, buffs that cost points but can be given to any Deathguard character or unit champion that has the Bubonic Astartes keyword, to augment any non-relic, non-grenade plague weapon that it already has. As standard, it applies +1 to the weapon's strength profile, and an additional ability depending on which pathogen you pick. I've gone with the Virulent Fever pathogen on the Plague Spewer, which means that any unmodified 6s to wound inflicts a mortal wound on top of its normal damage. It can be a little swingy, and Acidic Malady is also tempting to permanently increase the AP of the weapon by 1, but I'm also paying a command point for the inexorable Warlord trait Ferric Blight. This adds +1 AP to the attacks of any inexorable unit, including himself, against enemy units in contagion range, meaning that overall the Plague Spewer becomes Strength 6, AP 2, Damage 1, with a chance of additional mortal wounds. On top of this, he also has the Master of Destruction special rule, an aura ability that also triggers on an unmodified 6+ wound roll, that once again adds +1 to the armour penetration of any range attacks made by core units within 6 inches of him. Unfortunately, he can't buff himself with that rule, but it does become interesting to suddenly see AP 1 on Plague Marine Bolters, for example. The last HQ is a Malignant Plague Caster, which is a Nurgle unique Psyker who can cast 2 powers a turn and deny 1. Along with Smite, he knows Putrescent Vitality to buff nearby Deathguard units, and Gift of Plagues to extend the contagion range of a unit to get maximum effect. This can be really useful when used on the Lord of Virulence or Mortarion himself to increase the range of not only their contagion, but also their Warlord traits. On top of this, if his casting roll is above 7, which happens to be Nurgle's sacred number, then the closest enemy unit within 12 inches automatically takes a mortal wound. For a caster, he's kinda handy in melee too, with 4 attacks at strength 7, only AP 1, but as we've already seen there are ways to buff that, and he does D3 damage should his attack get through. For the troops, we're keeping things pretty simple. Firstly, 2 units of 10 Poxwalkers, which are basically disease zombies, shambling fodder that can't perform actions, but also don't suffer from morale. They have a built-in 6+ feel no pain rule, which is good since their armour is actually 7+, meaning they don't have an armour save without any sort of buff, such as cover. But if they should manage to kill something other than a monster or vehicle enemy model, they actually get to return one of their dead models back to the unit. They literally spread the plague and rebuild their unit from the enemies they managed to drag down. Primarily they're used as screens and to sit on an out-of-way objective as a low-cost camper. I've also taken a single unit of 5 Plague Marines, though I have kept them pretty basic with no upgrades. At range they have a basic bolter, but in close they have Plague Knives, which are AP 1 and are Plague Weapons, so hit harder than you might expect. And with 2 wounds at Toughness 5 with Disgustingly Resilient, they're pretty sturdy too. This is also a good point to mention the Malicious Volleys and Inexorable Advance rules. Volleys allows them to fire twice with rapid-fire weapons at full range if they are within half range or remain stationary, and Advance means that units with this rule always count as being stationary unless they advance or charge, so it's a nice little boost considering their slow speed. Next we have our Elite Infantry, beginning with 2 units of 5 Blightlord Terminators. Each carrying a Bubotic Axe, which is a plague weapon which lets them strike at strength 6, AP 2 and 1 damage, though I fully intend to have the Lord of Contagion near these, meaning they will often have AP 3. One of them will have a Flail of Corruption which will only swing at strength 5, however it does 2 damage and gets to roll 2 attack dice for every attack the Terminator would make. At range they have Combi Bolters as standard, which are basically just bolters with double the shots, but again Malicious Volleys applies here too, as BA Terminator is also a trigger for volleys. I've also chosen to take a Blight Launcher, which is a 2-shot strength 6 AP 2 damage 2 plague weapon. Though I am also very tempted to take the Reaper autocannon, as they don't care about the heavy weapon aspect thanks to inexorable advance. The other unit is a 3-man unit of Death Shroud Terminators. These are more of a bodyguard unit and will be used as such. They're extremely capable in melee, with a unit of 3 putting out 13 Strength 7 AP 3 Damage 2 attacks, or 26 Strength 5 AP 1 Damage 1 attacks for thinning hordes. They also have a Plague Spurt Gauntlet, which is a D6 shot pistol that is only Strength 3 AP 0 Damage 1, but it is a plague weapon, and as has been mentioned before, with the Lord of Virulence nearby, it's not difficult to suddenly have AP 2 on these things, and the -1 toughness aura somewhat negates the lower strength of the weapon. Once again, unlike most comparable units in other armies, all of these units are toughness 5 and have the disgustingly resilient rule. On top of that, the Terminators all have a 4+ invulnerable save, whereas similar units in Chaos or Marines would only be 5+, for example. These will form the core of my army. The support elements of this list, which I'm about to move on to, will be used to primarily buff these guys, keep them alive, and keep them at maximum efficiency while they absorb pretty much anything the opponent can throw at them. The rest of the elite section is something a little different. Deathguard have a slew of elite level characters. These are support characters, apothecary equivalents, buffers and debuffers, referred to collectively as the Fetid Virion, which is essentially a council of advisors that might not be lords themselves, but are useful nonetheless. If you were to take multiples of these characters individually, your elite slots would fill up way too quickly, so now you can take a Fetid Virion as a choice by itself, which allows you to take any 3 of these characters with the Fetid Virion keyword as a single elite's choice, though you cannot duplicate any of your choices, you have to take different ones. Firstly, I've gone with a Plague Surgeon, who is the aforementioned apothecary stand-in. He can heal any wounded bubonic Astartes model within 3 inches, and also projects an aura that gives nearby units a 6+ feel no pain effect. Now, normally this would be a 3-inch aura, but the Fulgaris Helm is a relic which increases any auras the wearer has by 3 inches, meaning he now covers anything within 6 inches. They can't revive models like their Imperial counterparts, but having one of these near a particularly tough unit such as my Terminators can be pretty powerful. Next is the Foul Blightspawn, another support unit that carries a particularly powerful Plague Sprayer that I have also chosen to use a Deadly Pathogen on. This time, Viscous Death, which allows me to reroll the dice to decide the number of attacks it gets. This means it gets D6 shots with a reroll at Strength 8, AP 3 and Damage 2. Though Unstable Sickness is also a pathogen I would greatly consider for this weapon, as it can dish out mortal wounds if it kills models, something it does very well. The real reason to take the Blightspawn, however, is the fact that it counters enemies that want to charge pretty well. You may in fact have noticed that theme running throughout this list. At the start of the fight phase, it can nominate an enemy unit within 3 inches, and make them ineligible to fight until everything else has fought. It also has the Stenchvats relic, which is a 6-inch aura that not only counters any abilities that an enemy might have to let it fight first, but also makes them count as not having charged at all, which is huge, as there are a great number of units out there that gain extra attacks, fight priority, and other abilities if they initiate a charge. And at 6-inch range, it's long enough to sit behind a front line of Terminators, for example, and have them punish anything foolish enough to charge them. Finally, we have the Tallyman, who is a pure support character, only having a plasma pistol to defend himself. But it's what he does for the army that is more important. Each turn, he can allow one core unit within 6 inches to increase its hit rolls by 1 for the turn, that's ranged and melee, and in each of your command phases roll 2 dice, and on a 7 or more, he gives you an additional command point, which can be especially useful in the late game. We finished the list off in the fast attack section with a pair of fetid bloat drones, both equipped with flesh mowers. I've included these mostly because I really like the idea of having more than just Mortarion that can move more than 5 inches a turn. Toughness 7 with 9 wounds, a 3+ save, 5+ invulnerable and disgustingly resilient means they're comparable to Imperial Dreadnoughts, though faster, and although their guns aren't bad, the melee ability of the flesh mowers can be horrific, with each drone getting 12 attacks at Strength 7, AP 2 and Damage 2, and once again it is a plague weapon. They even have a drone-specific stratagem that allows you to heroically intervene, as if it was a character to catch out any units that get too close. Altogether, the list comes in on the nose at 2,000 points, and 2 command points have been spent in creation for an extra warlord trait and relic, meaning that you start with 10, with chance for the Tallymaster to earn more back. The toughest decision I had was in leaving out any of the Plague Burst Crawlers, which is a heavy mortar tank that is basically the Deathguard's most reliable long-ranged firepower and very popular with regular players. I chose to take the bloat drones because, as I mentioned, I wanted a little bit of extra speed, and realistically, I would have had to lose one of the Fetid Virion, probably the Tallyman, if I wanted to swap them in. I think both builds are perfectly valid, it really does come down to personal choice. The other issue this list may have is with Mortarion. As mentioned, he's virtually a quarter of your army. Hell, find another 5 points and you can swap him for 3 Plague Burst Crawlers. And as I mentioned when I started this channel, I'm not making this only for competitive play. If you're a new player and you take Mortarion, you're probably going to get one of 2 results. Either you play an experienced player that avoids him or knows how to take him down, negating that huge point investment, and you end up feeling disappointed with him. Or you play against another new player who can't handle him, and they never want to play against your Deathguard ever again. Deathguard without Morty is perfectly viable. Anything from Poxwalker swarms using Typhus, or an artillery gun line with crawlers and defilers. As always, this is just a personal choice, and I've made this list based on my personal playstyle. But once again, that will bring this video to a close, so please feel free to share your opinion of this list with me in the comments, or if you're so inclined, playtest it yourself. The only thing I ask is that you let me know how you got on with it. If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and hit that big red subscribe button. After all, what else are big red shiny buttons for? And thank you for watching, and I will see you next time at the rally point.